Let the meltdown begin. MMA Meltdown on the Fight Network. I am Gabriel Morency. Let's do this thing. We're putting the pedal to the metal. No rest for the wicked as we pick up the pieces following UFC Stockton as Anthony Johnson turned Alexander Gustafsson into a human bobblehead doll. I expect the next time we see Gustafsson, it's going to be like Richard Nixon's head on Futurama. It's just going to be in a jar. That's as close as you can come to be getting decapitated without actually losing your head. And as everybody else loses their head and talks about that freight train that is Anthony Rumble Johnson and stating, oh, John Jones better watch out. As Lee Corso says, not so fast, my friend. As I still remember losing a large chunk, believing that Daniel Cormier had the power to knock out John Jones. I think a lot of people are going to go poor, believing that John Jones can't beat the next big thing. But I'll tell you what, that next big thing was a hell of a big thing. And man, that was a destruction in front of 30,000 Swedes in Sweden. We got the return of Anderson Silva. He's 39 years old. He hasn't fought in more than a year. He clowned around and he got knocked out. Then he came back and he broke his leg. How much does Anderson Silva really have left in the tank? Is he justifiably a minus 450 up to 5-1 favorite against Nick Diaz? Reed Kuhn, Fightnomics.com will join me. We'll break this down and more. A couple of the other fights on the card. Robin Black's going to join me in studio as well. We're going to talk some fantasy MMA. We got a $1,000 free roll over at Counter Move. If you're not playing Counter Move, you're missing out. If you're into fantasy sports and you haven't done fantasy MMA yet, you're missing out. It's great stuff. It's really easy to play. And the best part of it, it's free. You can win, we got $1,000 in cash prizes we're giving away. It's the Morency Robin Black Fantasy Sports Network / Fight Network free roll. We're going to get to that. We got our videos of the week. Let's bring in Reed Kuhn right now. Fightnomics, great book. We gave it away. We really appreciate Reed's generosity in giving away the books, and I know the viewers really enjoyed them. Reed, it's always a pleasure. How you doing, my man?
I'm doing well, man. I'm busy, though. This is a big fight week, and no rest for the wicked. We're coming off a pretty big weekend, and before that in Boston, so it's an awesome month for fight fans.
Yeah, it is, and you throw in the Super Bowl. It's just a great weekend for sports fans, sports bettors. We even have some crossover MMA props with the Super Bowl that we'll get to a little bit later on. And I'll tell you what, this is a hell of a card, isn't it, Reed? From top to bottom, there's a ton of intriguing fights on this card.
This is actually one of the first cards I can even remember in the last couple of years where I have some data on every single fighter on the card.
Yeah.
Normally there's a couple guys at the bottom that are brand new, you've never heard of, but that's not the case. I mean, there is plenty of veteran talent. I actually had enough sample size to even analyze up to 10 fights for this card, which I can't remember the last time I did more than 5. So I'm going to be watching from the very get-go because there is plenty of talent. I mean, anytime you got Ian McCall and John Lineker on the prelims, you have a stacked card.
Yeah, great fight. I'm looking forward to that fight. Jordan Mean is always a ton of fun to watch fight, taking on Alves. Talk to Gastelman, Woodley. So we can't get to every fight here. And, the card is Silva Diaz, right? So let's start off at the top. You heard me off the top of the show. Minus 450 favorite. It's his first fight since December 28th of 2013. Broke his leg. Before that, he got knocked out, and he got pretty hard. His head hit the canvas pretty hard. 39 years old. You wrote about it in the book. You often talk about it, it's a young man's sport. 39 years old, year layoff, coming back after getting knocked out and breaking his leg. And what I find interesting, Anderson Silva, and I would have lost on a bar stool bet, so to speak. Anderson Silva has not won a fight since October of 2012, since Stephen Bonner. Before that, he beat Chael Sonnen, 2 guys that are retired right now. It's not like he was fighting young, hungry fighters, Anderson Silva. When he did, he lost to Chris Weidman. I'm surprised that the number is as high as it is. I'm surprised that the market doesn't give Diaz a little bit more respect, Reed.
I agree with you. I totally agree with you. I think the problem here is that there's also huge unknowns with Nick Diaz. He's been away from the sport for a long time, and who knows where his head has been. He was, promoting fights and just not looking like a guy who was training. But you said it. I mean, listen, Anderson Silva is nearly 40 years old. He's been knocked down in multiple fights consecutively. He's taken some vicious head strikes. And that type of thing is hard to return from. And here's a guy in Nick Diaz, who can take a punch. He likes to push forward. He has a high-pressure attack, and, yeah, he might get hit in the head a few times on the way in, but he's going to back you up into a corner and come after you. So stylistically, these two guys are very, very different, and yet they each play into the other one's weakness and strength. So Silva could backpedal and just snipe Nick Diaz apart. Silva is still one of the most powerful strikers ever. But Nick Diaz, if he takes a few punches just to give one, he could put Anderson Silva away. And that's what's so scary about that betting line. I mean, that's just a lot of juice to be laying on someone who could go down with one punch.
Now, a lot of people seem to be torn on this, and I've talked to a lot of people that I respect. I personally think this fight is going to go a couple of minutes. I think it's going to go a couple of rounds. I don't think it's going to be one of these Anderson Silva highlight reel knockouts. Diaz hasn't been stopped, ironically enough, since KJ Noons of all people. So, 2007, we're going back a ways here, 2007. Diaz I know he hasn't fought in a while, but his conditioning has never been in question, has it? I mean, the guy's running triathlons and stuff. So I wonder about Silva's conditioning with this long layoff in the age, to be honest. As the fight goes on, I think Diaz could be the fresher fighter.
Well, he's going to be the fresher fighter from the standpoint of being able to eat some strikes, and that's for sure. I think you're right. I mean, both these guys were used to training for 5-round fights when they were in their prime, and Diaz definitely works out outside of the sport. But then again, he also has some bad habits outside the sport, so that could take its effect. I think.
So does John Jones.
Really, the question is who's going to be hit? Because someone is going to get hit hard, and Silva is excellent at causing damage. That stoppage you referred to for Nick Diaz was a TKO by cut. Nick Diaz used to have a real problem with bleeding a lot from cuts on his brow line, and he tried to have some corrective surgery to fix that. But Anderson Silva will mark you up. That's one of the things he actually excels at. Damage tracked, visible damage to the face is actually a metric that is tracked by Fight Metric. Silva is very good at causing visible damage. So Diaz is probably going to walk into some of that.
And of course, Diaz said, hey, I wasn't myself during the GSP fight. I was injured and all that other stuff. Before that, he lost to Condit. Controversial decision. I was at that fight. I actually had money on Condit, but I was surprised at the decision. So, let's move on to some other fights here. But, it sounds like we agree. There's so much unknowns, man. And, we got the psychology aspect of it. We got will his leg physically hold up, the conditioning. I think, I might be on an island unto myself here on this one, but I'm going to take a shot with the over 3.5. I think this fight's going to, I wouldn't be shocked if it went the distance, actually. But it sounds like you think it's all or nothing for one or the other fighters.
I do. I just think because of the styles and because of Diaz is going to force this to be a fight, one of these guys is going to end up going down. Okay,
Reed. So Gastelum and Woodley. Real interesting fight here. Gastelum's been on a runaway juggernaut since he upset Hall on The Ultimate Fighter. I would say this is a step up in class. He beat Ellenberger. He's beaten Story. Woodley showed flashes of brilliance, like the next big thing, and then in other times he's sort of been lethargic. What do you expect from him in this one?
I've actually worked with Woodley before, so I am pretty biased on this, and I do like him on the numbers for an upset. It is a big step up, and that's what gives me some pause here because we don't know how well Gastelum is going to perform against someone at this level. He's undefeated. It's hard to knock that. So we don't really know where his holes really are. But Woodley is excellent at wrestling. He's not going to get taken down, and he's got big power in his hands. So if you go toe-to-toe with him, he's going to do well. Where he falls short is with high-volume strikers who have range on him. And he fell short against Rory McDonald, who's the best around, in my opinion, and Jake Shields, who actually throws a very high-volume attack. And I think Woodley just was caught in the headlights there. So this is a match where if he does engage, he should do well. But the question is, can Gastelum stick and move and throw a lot of volume at him, get him out of his comfort zone? I think that's why the betting line is so close. You've got a logjam at welterweight in the title picture. You've got several guys that are kind of right there, Hector Lombard and Rory McDonald, as well as the former and current champ, Lawler, Hendricks. These two guys are right on the bubble. Whoever gets through this fight, they're going to be waiting to see that end-of-the-year title picture clear up because whoever gets a win here is a legitimate contender.
Yeah, similar to Miles Jury, you know, who hadn't experienced defeat before, moving up in class. And Woodley's sort of at a crossroads himself. If he doesn't win this, he sort of falls into the middle of the pack, yet he has an opportunity to take that next step up the ladder. Unfortunately, we got to wrap it up already, but check out Reed on Twitter. Check out the book. It's a must-read if you're a diehard MMA fan, better analyst, or anything else in between. Host, it's a must-read. Always a pleasure, Reed.
And for me, man, enjoy the fights this weekend.
There's Reed Kuhn with us. I wish we had more time, but we don't. But we got a great guest joining me in a minute's time. We got Robin Black joining me next. MMA Meltdown on the Fight Network continues.